Tonight, we still do not know if the death penalty is off the table for Bryan Kohberger. He's accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students almost 2 years ago. KREM 2's Shannon Mowdy is breaking down the hours-long hearing today where both sides argued over his possible capital punishment. Shannon?
Well, over the last few months, we have seen a slew of motions and objections lobbed across both sides, all centering on this possible death penalty. And that came down to hours of argument today about why the defense wants death off the table. In less than a year, Bryan Kohberger will face trial in Boise. Still unclear whether he could be put to death if convicted.
Capital cases are a really big deal.
Under Idaho law, a jury must unanimously impose a death sentence after finding at least one aggravating factor exists. Prosecutors are arguing 4 in this case. Multiple murders happened at once. Those murders were especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. The defendant exhibited utter disregard for human life, and he presents a propensity to kill again. Judge Stephen Hippler has his work cut out. The defense argued against each one Thursday. Attorney Ann Taylor says determining probability of future violence could prove tricky to a jury, mainly because of the word probably in the statute.
Those are hard concepts for a jury.
Standard would be that the jury would have to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that it is probable that the defendant would be likely, or is probable that they would kill again. I think is the way that washes out.
I think that's the way it washes out too. And I think it's just a problem with the word probably in there.
Prosecutors took issue with the idea a jury wouldn't be able to understand what's being asked of them.
The court is being asked to start with the presumption that a jury won't be able to follow the law.
But Taylor's request to toss the death penalty aimed at capital punishment in general. She points to the state's failed attempt to execute Thomas Creech by lethal injection early this year. That came down to the inability to find a vein, but she says the state has often struggled to obtain the drugs needed for that method. Idaho also allows death by firing squad, but she argues that hasn't even been set up yet.
To have him sit on death row and say, Idaho's going to figure out how to kill you at some point in the future in a way that isn't cruel and unusual and in violation of your rights, I just don't think that the constitutional protections allow that to happen.
Prosecutors fought back on the claim Idaho has no means to execute someone and say the penalty itself isn't at issue here.
Deciding the method of execution is not deciding the sentence. The sentence is death. The method of execution is just how that's brought about. And
Judge Hippler and prosecutors both brought up the fact, if convicted, the defendant will likely wait decades to die. Decades that could bring about unimagined new methods of execution. Now, Judge Hippler is expected to issue written decisions on the many motions argued this morning. We don't have an exact timeline for when those rulings could happen, but you can bet it'll be soon. Both sides are preparing for an August trial start date. Shannon Mowdy, KREM 2 News.